So Prado 9.7 is a good summary of everything that we've been learning so far about inverse functions. They basically say do everything there is to do with these functions. Okay, find the inverse, graph it, find the domain range. So I decided to do 9.7c, the one in the middle, to get you started. So they say f of x is negative x squared plus 3 for x greater than or equal to 0. Okay, let's graph this first. So here's our axis here, and you just need to make a rough graph. It doesn't have to be perfect. So it's obviously a parabola. It opens down. What's negative b over 2a? So what's the vertex? So we find that. So b is 0. So b is 0, so that's negative 0. Just calculate, obviously, over 2a is going to be 0. So it's 0. So when x equals 0, y is going to be 3. So 0 doesn't help us much, but when x equals 0, y is 3. So x equals 0, and then y is 0 plus 3, which is 3. So our vertex is at 0, 3. X equals 0, y equals 3. So maybe somewhere here. We know it opens downwards. So it's going to look something like this. Okay, close enough. Now, they say for x greater than or equal to 0, because clearly this does not pass the horizontal line test. We can't have an inverse function because we hit it in two different places. So we got to split it up, and they want the x greater than or equal to 0 part, so we ignore this part here. Now to graph the inverse function, so there we go, right? We have that part there. Now it passes a horizontal line test. To graph the inverse function, we draw the line y equal x, so a 45-degree line through here, and we flip it over. We flip it through there. So let's see if we can do that. This is going to be tricky. Let's do the starting point goes to right here. Okay, so it's going to go to right there. Let's go to this point here. Again, you go to right angle and the same distance, so maybe right about there. So that distance is that distance. That'd be a point there on it. Let's do a point right here. It goes across to about the same place, right? To right about there. And I should make these different colors because it's going to be confused here. Which is the one we're mapping, which is the one we're not. So I shouldn't be doing that. So this black point there goes to that one. This black point there goes to that one. And this black point here goes to that one. Okay, now the green lines are the ones we connect. So the inverse function looks like, yikes, it almost goes right on top of that one. Looks something like this. Yeah, so it's flipped across, goes like that. As this continues down, let's see if this continues down, this black line goes to somewhere up here. So maybe, yeah, so something like that, right? Yeah, so that's right. It looks something like this. That shouldn't be going down like that. It should always be going up, something like that. Right, that line there goes to that one there. Yeah, something like that. So that green line is our inverse function. It also passes all the tests. Passes the horizontal line test, passes the vertical line test, so we know that both things are functions, and so this should work. Okay, that's the graphing part. Let's do the domain part. Okay, they tell us the domain, right? X greater than or equal to 0, because it has to be a one-to-one function. So they had to tell us that because we had two choices: is it x less than 0 or x greater than 0? They told us this part. Now, what about the range? If we plug in 0, we get 3. And any x bigger than 0 becomes negative, right? And this becomes negative. This x squared is always positive, so this becomes a negative number. So we can get it as negative as we possibly want. But the smallest, the biggest it can be is 3, and then it gets more and more negative. So the domain, this is of the function. The domain is x greater than or equal to 0. You can write it like this, 0 to infinity. And the range is, we just said, when x is 0, it's 3, so it includes 3. Oh, and then it goes to negative infinity. You always put the small one on the left side, so negative infinity to 3. and we can't include infinity, so I got to put a parentheses there, put a bracket over here because we can't include 3. So let me check that. So x equals 0, we get 3, including 3. But as x gets bigger, this becomes bigger and bigger negative, and if we take away from the 3, it gets smaller and smaller. All the way we can go as close to negative infinity as we want. Okay, that's right. So for the inverse function, so this is our f. So for f negative 1, they're just switched. All you do is you switch the domain and the range. You just put them where the, so the domain is the range, so negative infinity to 3, and the range is the domain, so 0 to infinity. Before we even do the work, we can say this. You just switch them. It's so cool. So we don't even have to find f negative 1, okay? And maybe I should put f of x here and f negative 1 of x or something. Okay, now let's find f negative 1. All we gotta do is solve for x. So call this like y or something because it's easier to do math with y's. So we go y is equal to negative x squared plus 3. We want to solve for x, put the 3 over here. Y minus 3 equals negative x squared. Let's negativize both sides. So 3 minus y equals x squared. All right, just change those signs. Positive 3, negative y. I like writing it like that so you don't have to put a negative and stuff. Just do that. Now take the square root of both sides. So x is equal to the square root of 3 minus y. But there's a problem. It's plus or minus. Which one do we want? And so to know that, we know that x squared, negative x squared equals y minus 3 equals x squared, x equals 3 minus y. Okay, so then, so which one of these is it that we want? So the range of our new one should go from 0 to infinity. We know that. The range of our inverse. For that to go from 0 to infinity, we have to choose a positive one. So it has to be positive because we have our range. That's one reason to do that first. So we choose a positive one because this goes from 0 to infinity. And y, the domain, our new y, it's from negative infinity to 3. When it's 3, we get 0. When it's negative infinity, minus negative infinity is a big number, so this gets as big as possible. So it goes all the way to infinity, which is right. Our range is infinity. It's nice to write this as a f negative 1 of x. So f negative 1 of x is just the square root of 3 minus x. And our original function, right, f of x is negative x squared plus 3. So this is our inverse function, this is our function. Now, finally, they say, prove it, right? Show that you did the math right, which is always good to check your answers. I'm going to write this a little bit smaller. So square root of 3 minus x. So finally, we get to check our answers. So I'm going to plug, let's do this one first. So f negative 1 of f of x. We should get x out. So everywhere we take this function, everywhere there's an x, we plug this in. Okay? So it's the square root of 3 minus, and everywhere there's an x here, and f negative 1, we plug in f of x, we plug this in. So that's negative x squared plus 3, which is the square root of 3 plus x squared minus 3, which is the square root of x squared, which is x, like we're supposed to get. F negative 1 of f of x is supposed to give us x, which it does. Now, let's do it the other way. F of f negative 1 of x. And we take f, and everywhere there's an x, we plug this in. So it's negative, there's an x squared, so we plug this in. Square root of 3 minus x squared. Right? X is that, so 3 minus x squared plus 3. So let's see, that's negative 3 minus x squared is 3 minus x plus 3, which is negative 3 plus x plus 3. Negative 3 and the 3 go away, and that's just equal to x. So it worked. We did the math right. And that's the third set. They said to always check that. So in these problems, there's a lot of work here for these, so carefully do each one. I did one of them for you. First, you can graph them. Find the domain and range, which kind of helps you choose which one is right over here. And I didn't know if I had to choose the plus or the minus, because knowing the range. And then check and see that you're right. do f negative 1 of f of x and f of f negative 1 of x, and you should get x both times. Okay, that's a good summary of the whole inverse function things. I mean, inverse functions are really important in math. They're used all the time. Thinking backwards, I always find that really hard, especially this kind of flipping around, you know, so doing it really carefully like I didn't in the beginning, but hopefully I kind of did there. Drawing good pictures helps to get the idea of how these things work. And the whole horizontal line versus vertical line test and everything. So, okay, good. Hope that gets you started. This stuff is kind of fun, but you know, it's a little bit tricky, but once you get good at it, it's pretty easy, I think. All right, good.